Joseph Sheehan was one who had stuttered very, very severely in his life. He was the one that is quoted in an article by Van Riper of 1939 in November in The Atlantic, the title of which is "Do You Stutter?" And he cites somebody who was so severe that he would open his mouth trying to say an M word like Montana. He'd open his mouth before he'd try the M. He was so severe. So he was very severe. Well, I first met Joe Sheehan at Iowa, where he was the one who ran the Stutterers Clinic. And I was exposed to his thinking that became crystallized in his later writings. He was very helpful to me at the time because I had already read Van Riper's book saying that there were ways to deal with this without stopping stuttering altogether. And Sheehan was of that mind. He didn't speak about stopping it, but that we could learn to do certain things. And the major thing that he stressed at Iowa even, which formulated the beginning of his whole system, his book came out in 1970. This was 1947 that I was at Iowa, was reducing avoidance. He has the famous approach avoidance therapy, Sheehan does. And I think it's very good because it is true that the more you approach and the less you avoid, the better off you're going to be. So he planted that seed in me that was even before I met Van Riper. I had this seed planted in about give up avoidance as much as you can. Now, since then, I've tried to refine this a little bit because if you say I'm going to give up all avoidance, even normal speakers avoid certain things. Everybody will do some avoidance in life. So I don't think we should punish ourselves if we occasionally find ourselves avoiding a word or a situation. It happens, it's human behavior. But the way I look at it is that mowing the lawn, keep the lawn mowed, keep your avoidances down. Mow the lawn and keep it down so they don't grow. That's how I look at it. Well, I learned that at Iowa from Sheehan. And Sheehan spoke very well then. He stuttered slightly. He really stuttered less and less as he got older. However, I knew Joe very well. I knew him for 40 years. And he was a big enough person to say to me that once he got hung up at a faculty meeting when he was at UCLA. Years later, after he had recovered largely, he was very good speech, anywhere practically it seemed, but he got hung up and got into a head-to-toe block. So this, I think it shows the level of the man who would admit all this, but he was one of the better recoveries that I've ever heard symptomatically. It was a model of how to stutter properly. It was like a ship rolling very gently in the sea, and you didn't mind the rolls. He was lecturing efficiently. But I could see that thing working, preparatory sets were working all the time. It was like stabilizers to a ship. And there was a friend there who had known him 20 years. It was someone connected with Minnesota. It was not Bringleson, but someone who had known Van. And she said afterward, I've never heard Van stutter more than he did tonight. I said, well, he's ill. He's just got out of the sick bed. And this is true. I find that with me, if I'm not up to par, it'll show. I have to work much harder to maintain the fluency. This thing is like a ship that has to sail across a rough channel. If that ship has an engine that's made of inferior metal, you can put padding around the parts of the thing. It's going to work, but you're going to have to pad that while it'll maintain its speed going across the channel. Because if you do not, that mechanism is going to fall apart faster. I think what we do in therapy is to put something around to soften the engine so it doesn't become shattered from trying to keep up speed of the ship. That's a good analogy for what stuttering is like. I feel in myself that I've got something that is not up to par that's in the normal speaker, and I've got to watch to a degree, and I don't do it consciously much anymore because I'm pretty automatic now that I'm 88, but occasionally I have to. And I think that the goal for a stutterer is in therapy to get ahead to where it's on automatic as much as possible, no matter what the situation. But, as Barry Guitar so well puts in his new book, have 3 choices. Leave it on automatic. Study another way that you have ready if you're going to stutter, that you can go through and voluntarily manage your speech for a short time. Or if you must stutter, stutter gracefully. This is it. Barry Guitar has that, and I agree with this completely. I learned this from Sheehan, fundamentally. Sheehan would say that you have a choice as to how you stutter, but continue to stutter and work at streamlining your stuttering while you're doing it. You are not avoiding.